So if you've followed this page for any amount of time, you'll know that I am a massive Boruto fan. But what some of you may not know is one of the most common things that I get told by people that I meet that are fans of this channel is, oh man, I love your channel. I use your channel to keep up with Boruto. That is to say that people actively do not read Boruto and rather simply use my videos to understand what's going on in Boruto. And wow, that is deeply flattering. Thanks so much. More people need to be reading Boruto. See, Boruto for me, from both a manga and legitimate story behind the story perspective, is one of the most interesting stories in modern day manga. A manga that nobody on Earth gave a chance when it first came out, that had to, much in the same way as its own main character, claw out from below the dirt and grime that was thrown on top of its very much still alive body to wrestle back the #1 spot in the manga world on a week-by-week basis, just like its predecessor, Naruto. A manga that started objectively terrible, with the entire world stacked against it, that had to, against all odds, beat back those terrible odds to come out on top of the manga world. A manga that got one of the worst anime adaptations that we've ever seen, with some of the most hype anime episodes that we've ever seen. A manga that got its weekly anime pseudo-canceled 293 anime canon episodes in. Yet a manga that I believe is one of the best currently running. See, the story of the Boruto manga is a story of two sides of the same coin. A story of impatient readers, character, and art development. A story that nobody wanted to succeed, yet is succeeding in the face of all of its haters. And today, we're gonna be talking about that story, but more specifically about why you should be reading that story. Because today, we're talking you should be reading Boruto. But before I get to making a pitch on a manga that I basically pitch once a month anyways, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And a quick announcement here for you guys. For those of you who have been looking for the Naruto reaction series, unfortunately, I did take a rather long break, and I apologize for that. A lot of scheduling issues came up and some mental health things, but the series is now back, though it does now solely exist on Fourth Wall. Unfortunately for both you and me, it was kind of killing my page, and therefore posting it here on NCMer23 just simply isn't an option. But I also didn't want to quit the series because I very much enjoyed doing it, so it is gonna now have to solely exist behind the Fourth Wall paywall. I apologize, but it's the only solution that makes sense to me currently. We are still going to be posting one reaction video a week, so if you're looking for an additional Nick video a week, then you can find it over on the Fourth Wall. The link is in my description. I appreciate you guys so much, and I hope that you understand this change. So, Boruto, a story that maybe should have never existed. See, following the roaring success of Naruto after 700 widely beloved chapters of manga, Masashi Kishimoto, even though he was being begged by his editors to continue the story in some capacity, decided that he would rather work on a project that was completely separated from the idea of Naruto. And thus he went on to go and try to create a new manga, one completely separate from Naruto, called Samurai #8. A manga that encompassed all the things that Kishimoto ever wanted to do. A racemic blend of feudal Japan mixed with sci-fi elements that would allow for Kishimoto to truly expand on all of the nerdy stuff he wanted to tell the story of for the entirety of his Naruto runtime. However, unfortunately, because either Samurai #8 wasn't that good, or because the only thing people wanted from Masashi Kishimoto was more Naruto content, Samurai #8 unfortunately came to a screeching halt when it was canceled after only 10 chapters. And thus Kishimoto was faced with a decision. Either go back to Naruto or quit being a mangaka, at least for a little bit. And Kishimoto, who had dealt with the grind of being a weekly releasing manga artist for 15 plus years, made the decision that diving back into being a full-time mangaka just wasn't for him. And who could blame him? He's got enough money to live multiple lifetimes. And thus Kishimoto decided that while there would be a continuation to Naruto's story, he wouldn't be the one to do it, or at least not the one to draw it, which is where Kishimoto's longtime assistant, Ikimoto, came into the equation. But where Ikimoto fit into the equation was always kept somewhat purposely shadowy, as in the early days of Boruto's creation, many thought that Ikimoto was only involved in the artwork of Boruto, while Kishimoto would be in charge of the storytelling elements. And who could blame us for thinking this? When you looked up Boruto on Shonen Jump and you clicked it, you would see that the creator/supervisor of Boruto Naruto Next Generations was Masashi Kishimoto, and the art for Boruto was done by Mikio Ikimoto. However, for those of you who are religious watchers of this page, you'll know that the story is actually done by Ikimoto. Well, in the very beginning of the Boruto project, Masashi Kishimoto laid out a timeline of events that he wanted Ikimoto to get to with the Boruto story. As time has progressed, Ikimoto has strayed further and further away from those points, to the point now where Kishimoto revels in the fact that every single month he gets to be the first person to read whatever chapter of Boruto Ikimoto has created, implying that he is now almost entirely separated from the idea of creation around Boruto. However, pitching this kind of idea, who obviously wanted more Kishimoto, as Kishimoto was the person who made Naruto, would have put Boruto down dead in the water faster than the community tried to put it down in the first place. Yeah, we've obviously seen long-running manga picked up by the assistance of the original mangaka, with the most pertinent of stories coming to mind being things like Berserk. Even in the case of Berserk, where the original mangaka of Berserk laid out all of the events that they wanted his assistant to get to and told him how to write the story, people still don't consider the continuation of Berserk after the death of the original mangaka canon. And thus, the same discourse would have revolved around Boruto if it was openly revealed that Ikimoto was actually a lot more in charge of the story beats than even Kishimoto was. Which is actually why we didn't even become aware of this shift in apparent power dynamic until Ikimoto and Kishimoto went to an anime convention in Paris like 6 or so months ago. Boruto as a story was a story almost launched in shame of the lack of involvement of the original creator of the universe, Kishimoto, from both a storytelling perspective and an art perspective. But at the same time, Boruto's beginning was met with a lose-lose situation. See, because if Kishimoto was announced as lead mangaka on Boruto, well, people probably wouldn't have been too happy about that either, because there was a large, and I mean large, contingent of Naruto weekly readers who didn't like how Naruto ended, as it felt like Naruto's ended with the introduction of Kaguya simply with the idea of setting up a future continuation of the story in Boruto in mind, disregarding a happy and/or cohesive ending for Naruto in exchange for the idea of a continuance of the universe. And thus, whether or not Kishimoto was announced as the mangaka of Boruto, people were already looking at Boruto as the reason that the ending of Naruto was potentially ruined. And thus, when Boruto was announced, nobody wanted to like it. Very few fresh eyes opened chapter 1 of Boruto and thought to themselves, oh my god, I'm so excited that this exists in exchange for the bad ending of Naruto. I'm absolutely stoked that Naruto's bratty child is getting a story dedicated to him that came at the cost of me seeing Madara at the peak of his power. And thus, immediately, Boruto was despised, not only as a story, but also as a character. And there are good and bad reasons for all of this. The first and most glaringly apparent reason to hate on Boruto was simply the fact that the manga looked bad. I am a massive, and I mean massive, Boruto fan, and I am under no illusions that the early parts of Boruto looked terrible. While Naruto is not the most impressively drawn manga of all time, Kishimoto, over the course of his 700 chapters, had a lot of time to hone his art style. An art style that included some incredibly complicated backgrounds, well-shaded faces, and fantastic character design. And to make this problem substantially worse, chapter 700 of Naruto, its final chapter, is by far and away its best-looking chapter ever. A grayish scale, incredibly well-detailed and well-shaded chapter, most likely made on a computer as opposed to hand-drawn, that introduced what the future of this world looked like and showed us all the Boruto characters that we were going to meet. And thus we got our first looks at characters like Boruto, Shikamaru, Sarada. We saw the future iteration of Naruto, Sakura, Hinata. Everyone looked great. However, when the first chapter of Boruto came out, no one looked great. Comparatively to chapter 700 of Boruto, the art style had fallen off exponentially. And thus, just from an enjoyment of reading manga perspective, people who actually did want to read Boruto now had to trudge through white backgrounds, non-shaded faces, and ugly character design. Ugly character design of characters who got cool character design in Naruto. Boruto in the early parts of its manga run looked more like sketches than a finished product. Characters like Hinata, who got an aged up version in chapter 700 and looked fantastic, got weird, crazy downgrades. And worse than all of this, Boruto as an MC kind of sucked. He was grating, entitled, spoiled, a cheater, and worse than all, didn't understand the struggles of his father, the main character of one of the most popular manga of all time. On top of all of this, the world was stuffed to the gills with technology like trains and handheld gaming tablets and shinobi gauntlets that immediately made the world of Naruto unrecognizable. But maybe more important than literally all of that is the fact that for some reason, Ikimoto seemed to bastardize Naruto as a father and a character, which led Naruto-loving fans to say, Why would I read a story where my favorite character isn't the good guy? I spent 700 chapters, 15 plus years, hearing all about how Naruto made the right decision at every single point, about how he was this sterling example, a golden child, and now, in this new piece of IP, he's not? In this new piece of IP, he's a deadbeat dad who's more dedicated to the idea of paperwork than showing up for his daughter's birthday? He's some kind of monster who sends a shadow clone to his daughter's birthday while his real body stays at the office? I don't want to read that, and I definitely don't want to watch that, as the slow reception to the monthly releasing manga was coupled with an anime that released way too soon. I mean, you don't need to be a mathematician to understand that a monthly releasing manga and a weekly releasing anime going at the same time is not a good idea. And since way more people watch anime than read manga, the fact that several, and yes, I mean several, light novels had to be adapted in the beginning of Boruto's anime before they could even start on manga canon material led to most Boruto watchers dropping Boruto before the manga canon content even started. With people like Swag Kage, who was at that point in time by far and away the most important Naruto talking head on the internet, only giving Boruto about 32 episodes before they stopped talking about it entirely. And thus, before we knew it, Boruto was failing in not one but two mediums, and was hurtling its way towards being one of the most abysmally filled with filler pieces of anime IP ever created. The 73 out of its 293 episodes being manga canon. That is 25%. And is significantly bolstered by the fact that episodes 282 to 293 are all manga canon. Prior to that 12 episode run, the last manga canon episode was episode 220. And then, ironically, just as feelings around Boruto were beginning to shift, as this 3-month or so window gave us some of the best content we had ever gotten from Boruto, and the fact that at the time that we were getting this fantastic content from Boruto, we were just barreling into the time skip during the manga, Boruto's anime was canceled. Kind of. Maybe. Well, conservative estimates estimate that Boruto will return in 2026. Some claims say it won't come back until at least 2027, while some claims say it's never coming back. But the agreement for Studio Period is that if it does come back, it's coming back as seasonal. But there's proclivity for making the anime filled with filler and also not even that well animated even when they were doing manga canon episodes, is why the title of today's video is why you should read Boruto, not watch it. See, because Boruto's manga does not have a pacing issue. In fact, Boruto's manga might have a too fast pacing issue. You see, episode 53 of Boruto's anime adapts chapter 1 of Boruto's manga. And in episode 53 or 54, I don't remember which one, where we get to see Sasuke fight against Momoshiki and Kinshiki simultaneously. Yeah. That happens in chapter 2 of the manga. The beginning of the Chunin exams that eventually leads to the combat against Momoshiki. Chapter 3. Boruto's 40-page chapters allow for it to start at a breakneck pace. And while yes, it released monthly and therefore you had to wait a little bit longer than if it released weekly, with a 40-page chapter, you're essentially getting 3 chapters at once. And while yes, one of the biggest complaints that people will have about the beginning of Boruto is that there's no Land of Wakes equivalent arc, that argument parlays perfectly into why I think Boruto is the perfect sequel adaptation of Naruto. See, because a Land of Waves-esque arc could not exist in the early parts of Boruto. Having an arc like the Land of Waves arc wouldn't make sense in Boruto. See, the majority of complaints that people lodge against Boruto, at least from a storytelling perspective, to me come off as a misunderstanding of how Naruto ended. While yes, the Land of Waves arc was predicated on the idea that Genin were assigned to a mission that they shouldn't have been on account of the fact that the Land of Waves was too poor to pay for a higher ranked mission. However, if you dive even one iota deeper into the Land of Waves arc, you'll understand that the only reason that the Land of Waves didn't have the money to pay for a higher ranked mission is because Goto, a shipping magnate billionaire, was able to keep his thumb on the people of the Land of Waves for years now. And thus the Land of Waves was kept perpetually poor because of Goto. Something that wouldn't happen in the unified shinobi worlds led by Naruto. If there was a country as close to the Land of Fire as the Land of Waves is, that was being suppressed by a sadistic billionaire, there are multiple governmental bodies in place like the Shinobi Union, which was led by Shikamaru until he became the Hokage's aide, and I think is still actually led by Shikamaru, that would have sorted that problem out long before it became a problem so incredibly dire that the Land of Waves would have to scrounge together all all of the money they had collectively to hire Geni. On top of this, with the lessening of actual threats and wars, there are basically no protection level missions for Geni. There is barely enough work to keep Chunin and Jonin busy, and therefore any low-level protection jobs would also most likely have Chunin or Jonin assigned to them.
Oh, but Nick, they don't have to write the story like that.
Yeah, they kind of do. At least according to the way that people who complain about Boruto want the story to be written. See, because one of the #1 complaints that Boruto gets is the idea that Naruto isn't the golden child that he always was. That he's a bad father, that he's a bad Hokage, that he's weaker than he initially was. Every Naruto reader wanted Naruto to be as cool, as powerful, and as pertinent in Boruto's story as he was in Naruto. But to fulfill that ideology, you need to see that Naruto was successful in the accomplishment of his goal. Naruto's entire purpose throughout the entirety of his story was 1, to become Hokage, and 2, unify the lands, something that begins with the 4th Great Shinobi World War and the Shinobi Alliance. And thus, if in the beginning of Boruto, 12-year-olds are still being sent out on relatively dangerous protection missions, and lands are still being suppressed by despotic slumlords, then effectively, Naruto hasn't accomplished his goal, which diminishes the story of Naruto and Naruto as a character. See, well, yes, I will agree that there were some things to complain about when it came to the early chapters of Boruto. Ikemoto's art style was bad. The character design choices for characters like Gaara and Hinata were baffling, but the character design choices made for a lot of other characters was awesome. Ino, Konohamaru, the Otsutsuki, Sakura, Sasuke, and even Naruto's slightly controversial adult character design I enjoy, at least in the manga. Yeah, I'm not talking about Goblin Naruto. That I can't support.
Oh, Nick, Naruto's hair should have stayed long.
No, him cutting his hair short is meant to show that he's maturing. The only reason Sasuke's hair is still long is because he needs it to cover his Rinnegan. But all other complaints against Boruto, lofted by people who claim to hate it, just don't make sense. At least if they're being lofted by people who claim to be Naruto fans. With probably the #1 complaint I hear being that Boruto is annoying and entitled and a cheater and nothing like Naruto. But kind of like I stated earlier, Boruto starting as an entitled, spoiled brat is a testament to Naruto's success. Boruto is the child of Naruto, the literal reincarnation of a god, and Hinata, the princess of the Hyuga. Genetically, he was blessed. He was raised in a good household with 2 parents and a younger sister. He didn't know war, he didn't know struggle, and that's because of what Naruto was able to accomplish. On top of that, if you want to take it even 1 step further, you could argue that in the beginning of Boruto's story, we're not supposed to like him. And this is almost 100% completely solidified by the fact that he cheats in the Chunin exams, like 5 or 6 chapters in, and has his ninjadom revoked from him by his father. Now, unfortunately for anime-only watchers, they have to spend way more time with Boruto being grating and annoying and entitled before he gets knocked down a peg by his father. But in the manga, it happens in like chapter 5. And I genuinely believe that us hating Boruto was intentional, 1, because it set up for a great moment of character development where he had to learn the incredibly important lesson that even though technology does exist and it can be a shortcut to power, hard work will always triumph over shortcuts. Not only is this almost immediately symbolized by the fact that it's Boruto's dinky little Rasengan that he learns while training with Konohamaru and Sasuke that eventually leads to the defeat of Momoshiki, but also in that same fight against Momoshiki, when the scientist pulls up with a Shinobi Gauntlet and tries to record him getting footage of the Shinobi Gauntlet defeating a high-level opponent, that very same moment almost leads to the death of Naruto and Sasuke. You were supposed to see that Boruto was raised in this realm of protection that Naruto never had access to. You were supposed to see that this child was born a genius who got to sit on his laurels. Because as crazy as it sounds, any ounce of entitlement that Boruto has draws a direct connection to the level of success that Naruto has had. On top of this, if you want to take it even 1 step further, I genuinely believe that both Ikimoto and Kishimoto understood that Boruto was going to be hated as a story, and thus they were playing the long game by making their MC an unlikable foil of the lovable MC of their very popular IP, so that they can display that character growth can happen in any situation. And ironically, while the Boruto has never had to struggle like his father argument is used against Boruto all the time, if you stuck with Boruto, you would understand that Boruto has had to struggle like Naruto has never had before in his entire life. Boruto and Naruto are 2 sides of the same coin. They start their stories where the other ended it and slowly but surely make their way to where the other began it. Boruto begins his story sheltered and surrounded by friends in Konoha who accept him, while Naruto starts his story isolated and surrounded by people in Konoha who despise him. But as Boruto Naruto's story progresses, there's less and less friends around him until the entire world is against him and he's isolated. While Naruto's a story about him acquiring more and more friends until he's eventually able to call the entire village his family. But Boruto couldn't have the same character arc as Naruto. It wouldn't make sense, and to appease the Naruto fans who actually understand what Naruto was about, it had to establish in the early parts of Boruto that Naruto was successful in his endeavors. But there is still some of you in the back of the classroom right now crossing your arms and saying, okay, but they didn't have to make Naruto a bad dad. It's like, no, they didn't have to make Naruto a bad dad. But I'm happy that they did. See, Ikimoto and Kishimoto made Naruto a bad dad for the same reason that they made Boruto grating and annoying. Character development. The scope of Naruto's desires was never to become a father. Point out one, and I mean literally, one moment in Naruto where Naruto thinks about how he's gonna have kids one day. It never happens because it's not something that Naruto is concerned with. And this is literally said in chapter 1 of Boruto. Naruto has no idea how to be a father. Yes, he had people like Iruka. Yes, he had people like Jiraiya, but he never had an actual father. It wasn't until Naruto joined the Shinobi Academy, and it was actually not until Naruto was pretty well into the Shinobi Academy, that he began to form a relationship with Iruka as a father-type role. For the first 12 or so years of Naruto's life, he had no perception of what a father figure would look like, and thus he himself has no idea how to be a father. That's interesting. That's true to Naruto's character. Well, yes, absolutely, Naruto could have been father number one because it's what he always wanted. That wouldn't be true to Naruto's character because what he always wanted was to be Hokage, the leader of the village, to make the whole village his family. And thus Naruto needing to identify that there's a difference between his Hokage family and his Uzumaki family is actually one of the more compelling storylines in all of Boruto. We have to watch Naruto in real time identify how to be a father and balance that against how to be Hokage. We see him grapple with the idea of having to strip his son of his geninship. We see his respect for his own son grow as Boruto begins to train without the usage of shinobi gauntlets with people like Sasuke. And we really see Naruto start to come into his own as a father when Kawaki gets introduced into the story. See, because Kawaki does come from struggle. Kawaki comes from a very similar background to Naruto. And thus Naruto gives to Kawaki what he always wanted from a father figure, what he got from Iruka and Jiraiya. He gives him love, compassion, understanding. He brings him into his home. He calls him his son. And thus as Naruto begins to figure out how to parent Kawaki, he begins to figure out how to parent Boruto. He begins to show up for Himawari, which is symbolized by the parent-child day where Naruto and Himawari go shopping for a doll. True readers and understanders of Naruto understand that this was never in the scope of what Naruto thought he was going to accomplish. In the same way that it took Naruto a long time to master the Rasengan or the Rasen Shuriken, it took Naruto a long time to master being a father. And this is why I say Boruto's perceived failure as a manga really boils down to impatient readers. Because I would argue that watching Naruto try to figure out something that he never thought he would have to figure out, which is fatherhood, is more compelling than watching him figure out any jutsu he's ever mastered. Watching Naruto scramble to protect people like Himawari in the battle against Delta, or crumble when he sees Kawaki blow out Boruto's chest, are some of the most moving and compelling moments we've ever gotten from Naruto. They turn him into a person, not just the smiling golden god ninja Jesus character. As Hokage, after Boruto stabs out Sasuke's Rinnegan, he has to field questions like, if Boruto loses control of Momoshiki again, will you kill him? Thus we have to watch Naruto try to balance his role as Hokage and his role as father against each other. And this exact same line of logic can be applied to Sasuke. Sasuke, like Naruto, has no real perception of what fatherhood looks like. He loses his entire family at 7 years old. On top of that, he, like Naruto, has a duty to the village. A duty the scope of we begin to understand early as chapter 2, where we realize that Sasuke has been tracking down Otsutsuki and keeping them away from our world by himself. And thus, how do you weigh the safety of our entire globe versus time with your family? And yet, as the story progresses, Sasuke becomes more and more involved in the story, taking time to train both Sarada and Boruto, taking time to go on missions with Sakura to look for polar particles to save Naruto. And his growth as a character and a father peaks at the end of Boruto Part 1, where he once again decides to become a rogue ninja and leave Konoha simply because his daughter asked asked him to. Symbol of the fact that even though he hasn't spent a huge amount of time with Sarada, he still loves and trusts her like a father should. But there's still probably some of you in the back saying, but I don't like the technology. What do you mean there's mech suits and lightsabers and fire release Gatling guns and drones? Pretty much all technological and jutsu-based advancements have been made specifically to reduce the role of ninjutsu in the Naruto world, taking Boruto ironically back to its Naruto roots of taijutsu. And this is depicted time and time again, as the bulk of fights against people like Toneri, Momoshiki, Kinshiki, Jigen, Ishiki, and now Jura have focused more on taijutsu than ninjutsu, because of the introduction of things like karma marking, or the fact that a lot more people have Rinnegan now and therefore are able to absorb ninjutsu. And thus it's become more and more pertinent that ninja need to be trained in taijutsu if they ever want to be successful combatants. That so many Naruto fans complained about with the ending of Naruto has been effectively addressed in Boruto. And thus, when it's all said and done, Boruto to me is one of the most accurate tellings of what a post-Naruto world would look like, as technological advancements from the minds of people like Orochimaru, Amado, and other scientists was able to flourish under an improved global economy for almost 2 decades, while an era of peace led to a generation of the softest ninjas we'd ever seen, who were being raised by broken children who were forced into wars at the age of 15, 14, 16, 12, who were all trying to figure out how to parent with no blueprint because they lost their parents before they were able to figure out what their parents did correctly. All the while, those technological and power advancements have brought the Boruto universe back to the roots that everybody yearns for from Naruto, which is taijutsu in hands, was all given scope, perspective, and challenges in the only way that they really could have given Boruto any real threats, which was from outer space, because all the threats on Earth have been eliminated, and it's all done incredibly satisfyingly, because not only does the new gen rise up to the threat of these incredible challenges that even the previous generation may not be able to handle, but the previous generation rises up to the challenges that they're faced with, like parenting and keeping their children safe. And thus, even if I was about to say to somebody who was about to get into Boruto, don't get into Boruto for Naruto's characters, it's not their story, there's still moments where you get to see some of your favorite comfort characters be their favorite comforting selves. So why should you read Boruto? Well, I just told you, it's a great story, and the more you understand Naruto as a story, the more you'll appreciate Boruto as a story. So what are you doing? Go read it. But not before, if you've read it, you tell me about your favorite part of Boruto in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, I have to go get ready to wrestle at Anime Las Vegas.